ashthunderbird@gmail.com.
My name is Daniel Suelo, and I haven't earned or spent a single cent in 14 years, and I live totally without money. I've actually been sleeping in caves longer than I've lived without money, probably since the mid-90s. This here is one of my sleeping places. Use cardboard for a pad, works great. When I had a job, a respectable job in town, I decided I didn't want to pay rent anymore and live outdoors. So I've lived in caves all up and down these canyons. And this over here is a place where I sit and I have an extra blanket here. I use if it's really cold, but I like to sit here and relax. I bring books up or magazines that I find and read them. I'm collecting some onions. These are wild onions. Just eat the tops for like chives or get the whole bulb if you want to do some good cooking with it. I really do feel that wild edibles are a lot more nutritious than domestic. I think in domestication we domesticate or breed more for flavor or for a sweetness rather than nutrition. Delicious. This here is the kitchen. I've eaten lizards around here and grasshoppers and ants. One time I found a raccoon down at the road, freshly killed, and brought him up and cooked it. Okay, now I'm gonna saute the onions and potatoes in this pan. Some oil. There's like fat squirrels everywhere and deer. But I actually don't feel comfortable killing anything when there's so much getting thrown away. There's like fresh meat thrown away all the time in the dumpsters. I find that it's really rare that I get sick when I'm living outdoors. The only times I've gotten sick from dumpsters is if I've eaten too much sweets, but I've never gotten like dysentery from a dumpster. I've never like vomited or whatever from a dumpster. It was really hard for me to deal with when I first gave up money was being on the receiving end of charity, because often it's condescending. The giver is the superior one, the taker is the inferior one. The library is kind of like my office and my living room. I come here to work on my blog and do emails. And there are some valid points about using the library when it's paid for by taxes, and it's the one exception to my rule that I don't take government assistance. I've foregone everything else. I don't take food stamps. I don't go to the food bank. This is the closest way I know to publish ideas for free. It's an amazing time we're living in. I can write blogs and publish them to the whole world in a website that no one has to pay for. I like Moab, and I really love the people. There's a certain mentality that's attracted to Moab. It's a mentality that doesn't like the system and is open to alternatives. My town camp for when I don't have time to go up the canyon. I have stuff going on in town, I stay here. And it's pretty primitive. I prefer staying up the canyon. This is kind of like my classic hobo camp. Christianity, the Bible is very important to me, and I do feel like it influenced my life deeply. My father, he became a minister of a church. My mother, she got us reading the Bible a lot growing up.
I taught them God's Word.
I just believed that this is what I was supposed to do.
He was a good thinker, even as a child. And but what he got started on the life he's in now, I don't know. It just seemed to work into it.
My roommates, my friends were constantly challenging my conservative religious beliefs, and I was hearing the usual from the family. College is corrupting Daniel. That's actually where I felt like I rejected my faith when I was in the Peace Corps. In a lot of ways, I thought of myself as some kind of, like, I'm here to set Christianity straight because it's off the path. Why is it that we're not following the teachings of Jesus? Like, why is it that we just worship this icon but don't actually practice these things? Yeah, I feel like we should stop worrying and live like birds. That's basically a paraphrase of the Sermon on the Mount. The birds don't worry, and they don't carry around possessions, and they don't worry about money, and they get everything they need. I'm employed by the universe. Since everywhere I go is the universe, I'm always secure. Life has flourished for billions of years like this. I never knew such security before I gave up money. Wealth is what we are dependent upon for security. My wealth never leaves me. I looked around and I just felt like people seem unhappier here than they in Ecuador. Here everything's just so manicured and fake. And I go into grocery stores and freak out. There's too many choices. Everything's consume. It was all just too much for me. It was just like, I can't handle this. And my depression just felt like it kept getting worse. I didn't see how it could get any worse, but I kept sinking more and more. And thinking more and more about suicide a lot. And I thought, something's wrong. I can't handle being alive anymore. It's just impossible. So that weekend, I drove up to Mount Evans in Colorado to check out cliffs. So I went up the road a ways, then did a U-ey, and then gunned the gas. The last thing I remembered, the edge of the cliff hitting the floorboard of the car. Then it was just blackness after that. I opened my eyes. I didn't feel anything. It was just numbness. But I looked up and everything was red. The blood was in my eyeballs. And I remember thinking, oh shit, I'm still alive. And then I just remember blacking out again. And then the next thing I remembered, I woke up and I was at the side of the road. And I was like, wow, how did I get up here? If I heard this car coming down from the summit. And I kept going back and forth between wanting to live and wanting to die. And as he got closer, I was thinking, I don't want to want him to see me here. I just want to die. And I hope he passes me by. Sure enough, he passed me by and went on. And as he went by, I remember thinking, that fucker, what's the matter with people? And then I started praying that somebody would come and find me. And sure enough, another car's coming down. And I was like praying that it would stop, and then he stops. And I just blanked out again.
I didn't understand at first why in the world he wanted to commit suicide. One reason was he was gay. He is gay. He's a gay person, and he knew that I've always been pretty strict about morals and all this sort of thing, and I think he was afraid that the family might disown him.
He'd always told us, all of his kids, that he had unconditional love for us. But he said, you know, honestly, a sin always considered worse than murder was homosexuality.
We're born in sin, and we're all sinned. All have sinned and come short of the glory of God. There's none righteous, no, not one. Well, that's another sin. It's one we think is pretty serious, but he don't think it is.
Then he said, you know, this is going to take me some time to adjust to, and you have to understand the generation I came from and the culture I came from. We used to talk about killing gay people. And he said, God threw a curveball at me here, and this is a big test.
He said, well, I'm that way, I can't help it. And I said, I know it. And I agree with that. I'm not chiding you for that. But to me, should be a virgin about it.
But they never got to the point of full acceptance, which I never really expected. So I went back to Moab and resumed my job at the women's shelter as the homeless coordinator. It was there that I decided I didn't want to live in a house, that I wanted to live in a cave. Plus, I was just trying to save money, and I moved into a cave and continued to go to work, and they called me the homeless coordinator. And it's like I got this vision of my head just being this weed garden full of nonsense thoughts, most of them negative, just thoughts cluttering my head that were inhibiting my whole life. And I thought, this is the root of my depression. And I thought, I don't care if it takes till I'm 80 years old. Every thought I encounter, I'm just going to pull it up like a weed and let it go. I was like, wow, this is so simple. And I somehow felt like I have a choice here. It's like I'm not a victim of the universe anymore. As weeks went by, I just felt myself feeling lighter and happier, till finally I just felt like my depression was gone. And at the same time, I felt like letting go of possessions, useless possessions, like useless thoughts and useless possessions go hand in hand. So it was like this total cleaning of my life. So it took me basically the 90s to do that, until I finally got up the courage to give up my last money. And I took the money out of my pocket and I went to a phone booth similar to this in Pennsylvania, and I put it on top, and I figured somebody will take it. And when I did that, it felt really mystical to me. I walked out and it just felt like freedom, like warm water was pouring over my head. And I just felt like, wow, I feel completely comfortable and completely free. I feel like I'm at home. And it doesn't matter where I am. I feel like I'm at home. And liberation.
Zombies spend their precious time trying to decorate their lives, taking some measures, some knew what they want. From 1 to 10, 10's exactly what I am. 0 equals everything I'm not. So tell me what you like. Is it less than right? Is it less than right? Nothing that the road cannot heal. There's nothing that the road cannot heal. Washed under the black dog, gone beneath my wheels. Nothing that the road cannot heal. Nothing that the road cannot heal. Nothing that the road cannot heal. Will I make it tomorrow? Get my candy fill.
yeah, living without money really is about, you have to give up and you have to have faith. You have to trust yourself to chance. Like, stop trying to control everything and plan everything. You're missing out on the magic of life, which comes by chance. To me, this gets back to the idea of chance being the mind of God, and chance created us and continues to create us. It's an ever ongoing process, and it makes us stronger. And the more we realize the laws of nature, the more we are closer to God. And if we avoid it, we're constantly running away from the laws of the universe. We're going to be weak. Peace Pilgrim, she lived a fairly average life, housewife, married, middle class, and her husband was in the military, and she disagreed with the military. She just felt very strongly about peace.
This is the way of peace. Overcome evil with good, and falsehood with truth, and hatred with love.
All of a sudden, she just decided, I'm through with it all, and decided she would just walk out with no money and only the clothes on her back.
This is a real pilgrimage. It's actually a journey on foot. I don't hitchhike. I walk in spite of all the rides that are offered, and on faith. I took a vow at the beginning that I would remain a wanderer until mankind has learned the way of peace, walking until I am given shelter, and fasting until I am given food.
But she walked across the U.S., back and forth, and I think even in Mexico and Canada, without money.
I know people must think I feel poor because I'm penniless, but I don't feel poor. I have actually great blessings, and therefore I feel rich. I have health, happiness, inner peace, things you couldn't buy if you were a billionaire.
She started maybe about 50. She walked almost 30 years until she was 79. I've gotten stopped by cops quite a bit when I'm hitchhiking or walking with a backpack. They often ask me, what are you doing? And I say, well, I'm walking in America. It immediately appeals to that sense of America, freedom. You know, those two things go together. And immediately it breaks down some barriers. This is like my monastery, this canyon. I always feel like when I meditate, it's like there's a oneness with nature that I feel. Like that same calm that keeps everything alive is the same calm that enters me. It feels kind of mystical up here in that way. I used to spend long periods of time up here, and now I rarely spend more than a day or two without going into town. That in itself feels like a good thing to me, like to take what I've learned up here and keep bringing it down there. I also would like to find ways of integrating a simple lifestyle into society, starting with smaller communities that influence greater society. The idea is to make it so it's possible to have moneyless community, so it's not just a one-man show. So I'm just like stepping back and we'll see what happens. And if it comes together and grows organically, then that's the way I would prefer it myself.
He knows about Christ in his life. You know, he never married, and he was helping people, and he never used money. And so I thought, well, if that's the way he wants to live his life, that's his business. So this is what I concluded, you know. I thought, well, you know, that stuff is going to be thrown away. It's wasted. Now, I realize that, of course, they can't sell it after its date. But somehow it ought to be put into use. And so I'm all for him going in there and getting the food, as long as you don't pick up something that's been in there and gets him poisoned. You know, that was my only concern. But he knows better than that. He knows what to pick. He knows exactly what to choose.
But we discussed the whole homosexuality thing. Yeah, my dad is quite open about it, and my mom, well, she came around too, finally.
He comes around whenever he can, and we just love to have him here.
I loved him so much, and nothing like that is going to separate us. Thank you for this food for our bodies, and all the spiritual, physical, mental needs that we need. We just thank him from the bottom of our heart.
I finally came to the place where this is my roots, and I have to accept my roots, and I'm not going to feel a complete human being unless I embrace the roots that I was trying to reject.
You are listening to KZMU Community Radio in Moab on 90.1 FM and 106.7 FM, Utah's only all-volunteer aircrew radio station. Solar-powered, community-empowered, celebrating 21 years of live local grassroots radio in Moab, Green River. And this is Daniel Suelo. And this program is Turn On, Tune In, and Drop Out.
Turn on, tune in, drop out.